You know, when a crime happens, it kicks off this huge legal process, but we almost never get to see how it works from start to finish. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to trace one single case right from the 911 call to the final fallout, using nothing but the official court documents to piece together the hidden story of what happened.
And it all starts with this really startling line from the official police complaint. This single sentence, just a note from a 911 call, is what sets everything in motion. It's the exact moment a private fight becomes a public emergency. So what exactly happened that day? Well, the very first documents in the case file give us that initial kind of raw account, right from law enforcement's point of view.
According to what the victim and a witness swore to, the events of that day were just incredibly swift and violent. And get this, it all started with an argument over something as simple as car keys. The defendant, Bacchus, then allegedly heated oil on the stove, walked into his roommate's room, and threw it right on him.
The consequences were just brutal. The complaint meticulously lists the injuries that were documented by medical professionals. We're talking second-degree burns across his upper body and a direct burn to his eye. And this medical report, it's absolutely crucial. It becomes the official evidence of substantial bodily harm.
And you have to understand, this is a really key moment in the whole process. Once the police get involved and that level of harm is documented, it's no longer just a fight between two people. The case is now officially the state of Minnesota versus Bacchus. The state itself steps in, basically arguing that a crime against one person is a crime against all of us.
Okay, so the state's involved. That means the big, formal machinery of the justice system starts to crank into gear. And it all starts with one single foundational document.
And that document is the criminal complaint. Now, it's important to remember, this is not a conviction. It's really just an accusation. It's a collection of sworn facts from police, from witnesses, from medical reports, all put together to convince a judge that there's enough evidence to formally charge someone with a crime.
So, based on all the facts laid out in that complaint, the state brought one felony charge, third-degree assault, specifically for causing substantial bodily harm. And the potential consequences here under Minnesota law, they're really significant, up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
At the same time, the court issues a warrant for Bacchus's arrest and sets bail at $40,000. Now, you might think bail is a punishment, but it's not. It's really just a financial guarantee to the court that the defendant will actually show up for their hearings as the case moves forward.
Yeah, but the path from getting charged to, a final resolution, it is rarely a straight line. This next part of the case, it's filled with hearings, legal moves, and honestly a major turning point that completely changes the defendant's trajectory.
Okay, so this timeline really helps us see the key movements in the case. The assault happens in early December. A warrant goes out later that month. By late January, Bacchus is out on bond. But then, in April, boom, his release is revoked. So the big question is, what happened?
Well, the answer is actually found in a pretty standard condition for pretrial release. The defendant has to obey all laws. Simple, right? Based on a totally separate incident, the court found there was probable cause that Bacchus had failed to do that. And that violation was enough to land him right back in jail to wait for this case to be resolved.
And this right here, this is fascinating. This document basically marks the end of the fight. Not long after being taken back into custody, Bacchus filed this, a petition to enter a plea of guilty. This is the exact moment the case pivots from asking, did he do it, to, okay, what are the consequences going to be?
Pleading guilty isn't just saying, I did it. It's a very formal, very structured process. Bacchus had to confirm, on the record, a whole list of things. He affirmed that he understood the charge, that he was satisfied with his lawyer, and, this is huge, that he was not claiming self-defense or that he was being forced to plead guilty. This whole checklist is designed to make sure the plea is legit.
All right, so he's pleaded guilty. The only thing left is the sentencing. Let's see what the judge decided. So, the big headline number from the sentencing order is this: 26 months. Bacchus was sentenced to be locked up for over 2 years. But he didn't start that 26-month clock from scratch. The court gave him credit for 42 days. That's time he'd already served in jail while the whole case was unfolding. And that's a pretty standard practice in the system. But listen, the sentence was way more than just prison time.
It's so important to look at the whole picture here. He also had to provide a DNA sample. He's now banned for life from possessing a firearm. And, this is really important, he was ordered to pay financial restitution to the victim he hurt. Okay, so that last piece, restitution. The whole idea is to make the victim financially whole again. But as the case file shows us, ordering it is one thing. Actually getting it right, that's a whole other story. So at first, the court ordered Bacchus to pay a little over $3 grand in restitution. Simple enough, right? This number was supposed to cover the victim's medical bills and other costs. But then you find these emails kind of buried in the case file, and you realize there was a lot of confusion.
I mean, just look at this. You can literally see the email chain here between all these different agencies. They're all scrambling to figure out the correct numbers. Turns out the state's Crime Victims Reparations Board had already paid for most of the victim's bills. So the restitution money was mostly owed back to the state, not the victim. It's a fascinating kind of messy look at the administrative reality behind a simple court order.
And this table really breaks down the correction. The victim's direct payment, it got knocked down from over $350 to just about $25 to cover some out-of-pocket medication costs. And the rest of it, almost $3,000, was redirected back to the State Reparations Board to pay back the taxpayers. But the story we can piece together from these documents doesn't just stop when he gets out of prison. They show that in December 2023, after serving his time for this assault, Brandon Bacchus was again charged and convicted of disorderly conduct in a totally new case. It just goes to show that for some people, the cycle of the justice system keeps on turning.
And all of this, it brings us to a final and pretty tough question. We followed the paper trail all the way from a violent act to a prison sentence and a corrected financial penalty. The documents give us the cold, hard facts, the process, the final outcome. But when that last document is filed and the case is officially closed, what does justice really even mean for the victim, for the defendant, and for the system itself? That's a question the paper trail just can't answer.